course and a 6-hole advanced course for a total of 12 baskets. We'd use the trees on site and the shrubs as obstacles to provide different levels of technical difficulty. In other words, we wouldn't be trimming them and getting rid of them, we'd be using them. I would include T boxes and T signs, and there'd be minimal vegetation clearing needed. A buffer zone would be created around the houses to provide adequate distance from them. There are at least 2 locations for waste and recycling receptacles if they're deemed necessary. And there's at least 2 locations for off-street parking to accommodate anyone that drives into the area. So here's what the preliminary disc golf course layout look like. The red is the boundary and buffer zone between houses and the property. The light blue is a beginner course hole and fairway, and the purplish lines represent the intermediate course hole and fairway. So a 12-hole golf course, and you can see that there's parking here already. It's used as parking here, and this is a National Park Service parking lot right here as well. So there is quite a bit of parking available in the area. I just want to give a shout out to Leonard Muse. He's a 40-year Bay Area resident, and he's built and designed courses in Golden Gate Park and Oyster Bay Regional Shoreline. He's very, very familiar with us with disc golf in the Bay Area. So we have a good partner on our team who's been working with us faithfully on this project. Everybody wants to know how much use there might be. And if we look at it as disc golf players per weekend day, the busiest day, a low estimate would be about 15 to a high estimate of 35 players. If we look at rounds of disc golf played per year, a low estimate is around 2,000 and a high estimate is about 5,100 or 5,100. And preliminary construction cost estimates for this course, 2 alternatives. Alternative A is volunteer built, and it assumes the volunteers will conduct all construction tasks from cleaning necessary grass and brush, digging holes, placing baskets, and so forth. It includes the cost of 3 trash dumpsters or receptacles, and the GCSD would purchase equipment and supplies such as the baskets when they are not covered by donations. And it's worth mentioning here that, that the last 10 disc golf courses built in the Bay Area have all been built 100% by volunteers. So we're not talking about doing anything that is different from what has been done before and recently. The alternative B would be contractor built. Alternative A would be about $13,000. Alternative B, contractor built, would be about $34,000. Preliminary maintenance cost estimates. It's important that we're basing this on experiences from other disc golf courses in the Bay Area. Very little maintenance is needed. No water is used, no regular mowing is required. Volunteers would conduct all maintenance except for servicing 3 trash receptacles and a professional tree service that would initially trim any needed large trees or branches that might fall in the course. And the estimated maintenance cost per year would be about $5,000. So that's based on other experiences with courses in the Bay Area. So I guess to sum it up, that is the Parks Advisory Committee Disc Golf Subcommittee, is urging the district to move forward with this proposal. We understand that there will be a public outreach needed to neighbors. And then when that is finished, to negotiate an MOU with the Perivio Unified School District and provide funding to allow volunteers to build and maintain the proposed disc golf course on the vacant property. And we look forward to working with the district and school district staff, area users, neighbors to successfully plan, install, and maintain a great new free disc golf course on the coast side.
And do you want to mention briefly the conversations you've had with CUSD, which have been more positive and receptive than the last 3 times we talked to them?
Right. I've talked with the superintendent, Sean McEtridge, and he suggested that I submit a proposal, and he's been very upbeat about it. He says one of the main considerations is the Sonora Strip is surplus lands, and the district wants to keep its options open for potentially using that property as teacher housing, building teacher housing. And so they don't want any permanent structures, and the disc golf is perfect in that sense. There's not a permanent structure, could easily, quickly be removed in a day or two. And so with those kinds of ideas and background, they've been fairly supportive in our preliminary discussions. And again, I haven't spoken for the board. I've been just talking about ideas and concepts.
It's not, they do these MOUs and with just an annual fee, and just the example they gave Pat was that the tennis club pays them $12,000 a year to use the tennis court. So it's not a dramatic annual fee.
And they negotiated with the Coastside Tennis Association that if the tennis association is putting in money into improving that tennis facility, then that comes off that $12,000. So potentially that could be the same arrangement here.
I'd like to jump in here and first to say thank you very much, Pat, for giving such a comprehensive presentation. I really appreciate it. I think we're a bit early in the process still. I did have a communication with one of the school board members today and ran this by her, and she thought it was a perfectly appropriate use of that property that would indeed, as suggested, provide would not preclude the use of that area for some kind of low-income teacher housing. So I think that's a positive thing. I would be happy to entertain comments from board members, and I have a few thoughts. Do we have any board members who'd like to weigh in? Maybe yes, go back to here.
I had an hour conversation with Pat, so I'll let everybody else comment first.
Matthew.
Pat, did Leonard go out to the site before I understand it's a very preliminary plan that's drawn up. Oh, and by the way, this is, you certainly made it a lot easier to discuss, to know about this and discuss it. I'm really glad you put together this proposal. But did he go out there? I'm asking this because since this came up, I've walked across the property. I haven't studied it in detail, but I've walked across it a couple of times, and it's evident that there are wetlands plants here, there, and a lot of places. And even the lower parking area along Sonora might qualify as wetlands. So has he had a chance to actually look at the property?
Well, Leonard is with us tonight and would be able to answer in more detail, but the short answer is yes, he's been there several times.
Okay, good. What kind of permitting are we talking about here?
Well, there has to be a county permit, and as I submitted in the proposal email, most disc golf courses in the last 10 years have been exempt from secret review because they were considered not significant. And so I anticipate, I hope, that this would be the case with disc golf before, because this is a smaller community course than some of the others that have been proposed.
Well, it would certainly grease the slids. Did you talk to the CUSD about that at all?
No, we haven't had a chance because we're waiting for your direction.
Yeah, well, it's certainly a good candidate for an initial study, but you never know what's going to find, what initial studies are going to find. So, and as you know, the CEQA process is expensive.
Right, and again, we're hoping that after the preliminary analysis that it would be an exemption. So we wouldn't have to go through, I mean, a CEQA analysis to have this golf course is, to me, overkill.
Is that all, Matthew?
Go ahead.
My big concern is the neighbors and how they are going to feel about this. We have been in the position before of proposing what we thought was going to be something popular and finding some pretty adamant opposition in the neighborhood. How do you envision community outreach being done, and how can we make sure that we have reached the people who would be affected by this? I do think it seems like a reasonably priced, at this point we have a lot on our plate, but it doesn't seem expensive, and it seems like it would be a valuable thing. But I don't want to right now, with all the things we're doing, I don't want us to get into a big fight with a whole bunch of residents of El Granada. So how do you see that community outreach working? How do you see it being done?
Well, a couple parts to that. First of all, I'm going to let Leonard talk a little bit about his experiences with other disc golf courses in regards of public perceptions. But Michelle Dragony on the PAC subcommittee has offered to lead the effort for community outreach, and she's going to put together a plan that she would present before the board, a public outreach plan that would include a number of different ways of getting feedback from neighbors on Coral Reef and elsewhere. Okay, so tonight you don't need any, I don't think we're going to take any action tonight. This isn't an action item, I don't think, but our general, I think, request to you is we'd like to get some feedback from the neighborhood, and if Michelle's going to do it, that would be great. Nancy.
I think that's really the hope for tonight, is just to mainly get a green light to move to the next step, which is public outreach. That there's enough there and enough faith in that this could be something that goes forward to do the public outreach. Having walked the site a couple times, I think the ones I would probably just want to be sensitive about is Coral Reef, because their backyards are pretty exposed to the site. On Sevilla and Sonora, you have to go through some territory to get to the houses, but they're pretty exposed on Coral Reef. So I'd want basically something general in the district, because we heard from the disc golf enthusiasts from the coast side, but the people paying the bill are the people in the district. So I'd like to see something generally there, and but then specifically, as we did with Balboa, to make a special effort to reach the neighbors who are around the perimeter. And they may have concerns. Their concerns may be mitigatable, but I just would like to know what they are. We probably could have mitigated 80% of the concerns with the Balboa people, but the liability was the one we couldn't address. So, but I think the proposal is put together really well. It could be one of those things. We've gone to CUSD 3 or 4 times with different ideas, but with different administration. They've been more receptive to this one, and maybe because this is such a low impact, easy to do use. I think for the district, it's just a challenge on top of, we're fairly stretched across the big park project right now, but to to have a Sherpa for the permitting process is probably, if the community response is fine, then I think it's just resourcing the process. Just everything takes a long time, which is always disappointing. But this one could actually have a nice endpoint.
Well, we're hoping, Nancy, we're hoping that that through the use of volunteers and the PAC members themselves, that we can do a lot of this without putting additional burden on the board or staff members. And, you know, one way to sort of speed this process, the permitting process up, is for the district to hire Leonard Muse to go through that. He is involved in permitting for disc golf courses in the Bay Area for a number of years. But he's volunteered all this time to this point, and I think it would only be fair that if he had to be involved in the permitting, that he would be paid a reasonable amount.
Well, we'll hold that thought.
Bring that back at a later, you know, once we have some community.
But it's a good thought if we could contract it. I just don't know what's involved in order to do that.
Okay.
Eric and David, I just said that we.
Yeah, David, did you want to speak?
Yeah, no, I appreciate all your efforts. I think it sounds great. I think we know how many variables could be at play and change the dynamics of everything. But I think based on what we've seen, I think it's in our best interest to move things along as soon as possible so we get to those points, you know, sooner rather than later. So I think, Pat, do you feel like you need anything from us? I thought I heard you say you're kind of waiting for direction from us. Do you need a vote or anything else? Or are you just kind of looking for general consensus in terms of anything holding you back from the MOU or anything else? Kind of putting together a plan for the outreach with the neighbors. Anything else that we could do now that would help you?
Okay. Well, thank you. I think just a general consensus, because I don't believe this is an action item tonight, but if there's a consensus among the board members that this is worth pursuing and that we should then go to the next step, which I perceive as public outreach, then we'll do that.
All right, that sounds good. Eric, did you want to just weigh in here?
Excuse me. Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I mean, my only suggestion would be, I think that we should be working in parallel to flesh out what an MOU would look like with the school district while we're doing the public outreach. To be frank, until I see something written that the school board seems amenable to, will be skeptical that this is the thing they will actually go for. So I think we need to be moving that process along in parallel with the public outreach. So, I mean, that would be my only suggestion.
All right. Well, I think we could certainly do that. They have an MOU that they use with other groups that we could ask.
Yeah, it should be straightforward to understand if we can work with what they have.
Yeah, and if you can send that to Chuck so that Bill can take a look at the substance of it.
Right.
Or did you want to add something?
I was just going to mention we've drafted a super preliminary, way preliminary MOU. I have not reviewed it by board members other than Nancy has seen a preliminary one. Haven't, of course, sent it to the school district yet. But Eric, to your point, we've started that process, at least to draft a preliminary one.
Excellent. Great.
Okay. All right. I guess the consensus is that do the community outreach, continue doing some investigation, and come back to us at a later meeting with more information. Matthew, did you want to add something?
Yes, I like this project. I hope it goes ahead. But if we authorize or ask them to start the public process, at what level is the board or the PAC involved in this? I know we want to move this along, but are we going to have any input on how the public outreach is done and how it's assessed? Or are we going to turn them loose and which I think Nancy can certainly handle this. And we'll get the next thing that we consider is the result of the outreach.
So Nancy, you'd be, as the liaison to the committee, okay to continue to work with them in this and provide some direction on the outreach.
Yeah,
and
I think
of course,
Pat said Michelle will put together a proposal. So, but I think if you'll deputize me, we don't need to wait and bring the proposal back to the next PAC meeting.
I agree with that. I think
keep everybody informed of what it looks like and give you a chance to comment.
I agree with that. I think if Nancy, thinks it's a good program, does anyone have any heartburn about that? Good. All right. So we look forward to hearing more information from you on what the community thinks and so forth. Anything further?
My last comment is that I like that the proposal emphasizes the use of volunteers, and I really think that every effort should be made to have this happen in that way.
Yeah, I think that would give us a lot of community buy-in. I also want to emphasize the environmental aspects, and you address those in your proposal. We don't need to talk about them now, but that is also something really important, I think, for me and for the rest of the board. So we look forward to hearing more. So we have a long agenda, so I'm going to move on to the next item.
Excellent proposal, guys. Thank you very much.
Again, my compliments on the proposal. Moving forward to the Heart Drive Collective.
I think Leonard had raised his hand.
Oh, Leonard, sorry. Go ahead. Leonard, did you speak?
He just,
You need to unmute, Leonard, if you're speaking.
I don't see him. Is he on the?
Leonard?
Yeah, he's on the,
There he is.
upper left.
He's unmuted. Leonard, did you want to say anything?
This is not the Leonard you think.
Oh, hi, Leonard.
Hi, Leonard.
That's the Leonard I thought.
Leonard, I haven't muted you in a while. Can I now? I don't know.
Leonard, this is Leonard Warren, who was a director of GCSD for many years and is an esteemed expert on lots of matters relating to Granada and GCSD. Leonard.
So, I have a number of comments. Who came up with that silly name, Sonora Strip? You need a different name for it. That's really bad. I hate that name. And I should have started out saying, I've been saying for 20 years that this needs to formally be a community park. So I think this is great. But come up with a different name that's not Sonora Strip. For decades, it was known as the CUSD North El Granada property, even though it's actually more west than north. So that's one comment. The next comment is I don't think the 50-foot buffer strip from the properties there is enough. I'd like to see it be 100 feet. And if you go out there, 50 feet is not, 50 feet for a public park away from people's housing and property it's just too close. Next comment, I'd like to see a formal declaration by the district that the 100-year-old or now almost 120-year-old sidewalks that are mentioned in Barbara Vanderwerf's book, referred to as sidewalks nowhere, that those sidewalks are to not be touched. They're to remain exactly as they are for historical reasons. And if you want, I can talk to people privately later about why, but I think it's really important to maintain the history, and those sidewalks in nowhere are a really important part of El Granada history. I think Matthew mentioned wetlands. A formerly local amateur expert on this stuff, I asked him about 15 years ago to take me through the property and evaluate wetlands. he went through himself without me, and he reported back to me that his estimate was 30% of the whole 20 acres is wetlands, but scattered around. It's not concentrated in any one place. Although I have photos which I can provide on request of the lower part, basically over the back fence of the 4 of the 5 houses on Sonora. There's about an acre there that turns into a...
This is getting into design details, and we have a long agenda tonight. So I wonder if these are valuable comments. Maybe you could give them directly to Pat, because I don't think the board needs to really have all this detail tonight.
Okay.
But actually, the history is really useful.
All right. I hope I still have Pat's email address. If not, I'll get it from someone else.
I mean, is there anything that we need to know tonight since we've moved on from this item?
Looking at my notes, I guess that's it.
Okay. Great. Well, we appreciate you very much, Leonard, but I'm just worried about this meeting going on forever. So thank you.
Well, I've been told it's dinner time, so I won't be at the rest of your meeting.
Oh, okay. I hope this is what you came for. Anyway, moving on to, thank you, Leonard, as always. Moving on to the Hart Drive Collective proposal for Burnham Park. Delia, did you want to speak to this?
I guess I'll have to. I was hoping that Jesse Nelson would be attending the meeting, but I don't see him. I received an email request to use the Burnham parking lot area for a one-day fundraiser event for 4 hours. I provided, or he provided, I should say, a little map that, I don't know what happened to it, but there was a little map that he drew showing the space that he needed. And he does have quite a bit of experience in putting on these types of events. It wouldn't be obviously a GCSD event. It would just be a matter of us approving his use of our property. So he's requesting to use it for a Saturday that has yet to be determined. Originally, he had asked for May 5th, I believe it was, but it was just too soon. And he said he could do it any other time, but he would do it on a Saturday. His phone keeps ringing. I don't know what the board's feelings are about something like this. It sounds like he would have, be handling everything except where he did request some additional trash receptacles. And I spoke with Chris Porter. She said she'd be happy to work with us on that by providing some additional receptacles and also extra pickup. I would be available to kind of oversee the setup and the breakdown of the event if the board were to choose to approve of it. So it sounds like it's a pretty good program that he runs. They do this for other nonprofit organizations to raise funds. And this is for a local, let's see, what did he say? He said it was for a program for school kids that he was working on.
Or Next Generation. That's the program. It's called Next Generation. I haven't heard of that program at all. Does anyone know that program?
I'm not familiar with it.
I have a lot of questions on this proposal. I don't know if, let's see if other board members have questions. Nancy, I thought I saw your hand up. I have real concerns.
My only comments were, I think he'd have to add to the list at least a porta potty for the day. And because that is such a busy parking lot on the weekends, and he's talking about a Saturday, I think just to give all the locals that use it a heads up, I'd want some signage up, a week or 10 days ahead to let people know that it would be closed on that day, just so that they can plan. Because you're gonna have to close it for the day rather than just the afternoon. Otherwise, it'll be full.
He's only asking for a portion of the parking lot, just so you know. So,
well, he has booths, a whole row of booths. He has an 18-foot stage, an 18-foot flatbed trailer, and
yeah, he'd bring it in.
He's gonna need, if he's got food, are they gonna have tables for people?
He didn't put tables in his thing. I guess he would just have the booths and people would walk around. Like I said, it's only for 4 hours, so I didn't ask.
What about this amplified music? That's one of the things that we've been really concerned about, that, that we have if we're going to have programs there, that it be, you know, something that our community really wants, and that we people don't feel like we're using the Burnham strip for benefit, you know, with a lot of noise and taking over the parking and so forth. So I have some concern about that. What do other people feel? And it's just, it doesn't specify which date. So I think I have some questions, and I think if it came back to us, maybe with more details, we could really consider it. And I'd like to know more about who it's going to benefit. I mean, is it going to benefit the people of El Granada for us to do this? I don't know what this nonprofit is.
I mean, yeah, we can get more details. It does say summer arts program on the coast side. So I think if, you know.
But is it an existing program?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with Next Generation.
Yeah.
You know, I've seen some of the stuff that he's done before, and I feel like it's pretty low scale. I don't feel like, you know, I don't envision this being too crazy. I think we have to take all the right precautions in terms of insurance, and, you know, if there are food vendors, you know, the process with the health department and all that. And, you know, I know that could take a couple, you know, a month plus on its own to the paperwork. So I agree the dates probably would have to be pushed back. I think it just becomes, you know, if they come to us another month, you know, at that point, they, you know, I don't know, what other questions do you have, Barbara, that they would need to address?
Well, I'm concerned about the number of people. If they're going to have food, are they going to have tables for people to eat, or are people going to sit on the ground and eat it? How much of the parking lot? I mean, it implies that they're going to use the whole parking lot, but Delia says they wouldn't use the whole parking lot. If they use the whole parking lot, you know, we're displacing our surfers and our, you know, our local beachgoers for this. I want to know who it's going to benefit and what it does for the people of El Granada. I don't know. I feel like in artisans and shop owners, how many and so forth. And
Did you guys?
I think for your board. Yeah, I think for your board to make.
Go ahead, Chuck.
Sorry. I think for your board to make a decision, as you're all saying, it needs to be more fleshed out. You need a map of, you know, where he's going, what portion of the parking lot he's going to take up. We've got to address Nancy's issues and insurance issues. So I think we need y'all need another month. Anyway.
Okay, so
there's no drawing in the pack deal.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize, because he did provide a drawing and I thought it was in here. So I just realized that it wasn't. The drawing, I wish I had it printed out. I would show you, but it was about half the parking lot. He showed like 3 or 4 booths, and he drew on the stage, but I'll go ahead and send it out to everybody so you can take a look at it. And I'll ask him for a little bit more information on the New Generation program and, you know, who that benefits. It says on the coast side, so I don't know specifically, but I'll see if I can get a little bit more specific. So I wish, like I said, again, I wish he was here to answer these questions, but.
Well, that was going to be my final comment.
Yeah.
I think he needs to be here to answer the board's questions.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, anything
Is there
further?
any other questions or concerns that if the Delhi get back to them with, that they could address by the time we meet next month?
I got a printed packet, so I did get the map that he provided, and as Delia said, it is approximately half of the parking lot. It's right up against the drainage and the willows that come.
Can you hold it up by any chance?
I don't think that's going to be very useful.
Oh, I can't. Yeah. I thought maybe you could. It was kind of cute though how you drew it up.
Yeah, all the questions. The first big one Nancy already asked, which is the big necessity. There has to be restrooms probably, and that's not included either on the map or on his proposal. And we can publicize this 10 days ahead of time and put up signs and stuff, but that parking lot does get full, and I would suggest that there needs to be at least a line of closely spaced traffic cones along the side of where the parking is still going to be allowed. Because I know from experience that if you leave enough space between the cones, people simply drive in. So, but yeah, I think that we can let this happen. It's one day for 4 hours, but it will be a day-long event for the organizers and the participants. But we're not shutting off the parking lot completely, and there's always the Caltrans side for people to park on too.
Yeah, well, and I'd also like to know about the amplified music and what that's going to be.
I think his original email said that they would face it toward the ocean and away from the houses, which is what Michelle's proposal.
But they need a generator.
I'm thinking of Michelle's proposal, and we were concerned about the impact of that happening on the strip. So I feel like these folks, it'd be nice to know more about what they're proposing. I'm not against it, but
they're going to have their own generators and sound.
Yeah.
So that's noisy for people. So.
Well, I'll let him know that in order to move this forward next month, that he will have to participate, and we'll try and get some more of these questions answered.
And I can send you an email with some of my questions if that's easier.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, sorry I didn't do it in advance. Anything further on this topic? And let's move on to Nancy, the selection of architectural consultant for design services for the community center. So exciting. Nancy's done an amazing job.
Well, I didn't do it alone. Since the last meeting, Barbara and I took references and visited a few sites that the two architecture firms had built. Our recommendation you can see in the pack, and I see Jill Ayers is here from Group 4. We recommend the selection of Group 4 Architecture Research and Planning for our community center and district office. But both firms have done community centers. Overall, we had such strong feedback, particularly on the team that was proposed by Group 4, and particularly about Dawn Merkes, who would be our project lead. I sent a note to the reference from San Bruno saying, here's what I'd like to talk to you about. He called me within 30 seconds to sing the praises of his experience. And I had that same kind of experience with the other two people that I talked to. The other really positive thing about both Dawn and Jill, who's here with us, who would be on the team, is they are both long-term residents of Montero. Both architects, all 4 proposed team members from Group 4 were architects, which was not the same with the other group that we evaluated. And so they not only know the climate that will have some impact on design details, but they also know the culture of the coast, and I think that helps as well. So the Tom Conroy from Kikuchi and Kenkel has worked with both firms. He said with either one, we would get a community center with a capital C, which I think is the way he put it. Couldn't go wrong with either one. He's worked with both and thought highly of both of them.
And I spoke to one place. That was when I was having COVID, so I didn't really pull my weight on this committee. But one of the references that I talked to said that they're unflappable and that they do an outstanding job of community outreach, that they work very well with the community. And I think that's important for us too. It's really meant a lot.
The person from Pacifica Civic Center, I think, might have been San Bruno, but it might have been Pacifica Civic Center, said that through the course of their project, they'd been through, I think, 3 recreation and community service directors and 2 city managers. But the one thread that pulled it through and kept it going was done in Group 4. So that kind of them managing, the process and keeping it moving, I thought also was for a district as resource strapped as we are, I thought that was really important.
So Nancy, would you like to make a motion and then we can have further discussion?
Okay, I move that we accept our proposal and move forward with group 4. Next step would be to work on a contract.
Can we, Chuck, can we authorize the contract tonight, or do we have to bring the contract back to the board?
Well, you can authorize it subject to approval by myself and Bill. Is that good with you, Bill? Yeah.
How do you feel about that, Nancy? Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, so I'll revise the motion to move that we accept the recommendation of selection of group 4 architecture, research, and planning, and authorize the general manager and general counsel to move forward with the contract.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, any further discussion? David, Eric, Matthew, would you want to comment on this, or do you have any concerns?
I can't see any better fit could be found than these folks for what we need and what they've done in the past, and the fact that they're locals and everything fits.
Great.
Do we have any ballpark on where we expect them to come in at as far as expectations?
We did a request for qualifications, but not for costs, because we don't know exactly what we want to have done. So that will really be kind of in the negotiation of the contract.
And there'll be a phase 1 of the contract, which will be phased. So we're not just writing a blank check for the whole project. We're going to, right, Chuck, we're going to enter into a contract for the initial conceptual work and perhaps outreach work. And then as we go forward, we will add additional. And, you know, their fees are similar to those of the other firm.
Correct, yes.
So when you say phase
good question, though, David.
When you say phase 1, are you talking about task 1 on page 83 of our PDF, 35 of their RFQs?
I think I haven't gotten any farther, to be honest, Eric, than getting to this stage and getting approval and then laying out details with Chuck from there. So.
I mean, to follow up on David's question, I mean, I'm comfortable delegating out contract negotiations, but I'm not comfortable delegating out a contract for the full 5 tasks as laid out without seeing it.
I think it would be just task 1, but it probably wouldn't be much trouble if you guys can negotiate a contract and bring it back to the board. If the board's more comfortable with that, is there any reason not to do that? All right. So we're authorizing them to negotiate and come up with a contract that will come back to the board.
So
we don't
Nancy,
need to
will you amend your motion to that?
Yes.
Okay, and Matthew, will you continue your second?
No. Yes, I will.
Okay.
All right. Does anyone else?
Look at task 2. We have a lot of detail to talk through with them about what we would even do in task 2. So we definitely have work to do before we get there.
All right.
So we'll focus on task 1 to get started. So, any further comments on this? Questions? All right. Can we have a roll call, please?
Director Dye.
Aye.
Director Clark.
Aye.
Director Sukumal.
Aye.
Director Marsh.
Aye.
And Director Seaton.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 5-0. I want to point out, I keep forgetting David. David had pointed out we didn't do roll call, so I'll just announce, obviously, everyone's here, as well as the GM and legal counsel.
Did we do it? I asked for it. We didn't do it?
I think I interrupted you by going back to the special meeting. So,
Nancy, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to make one more comment on the community center. Another little bit of homework that I did following up on our last discussion. We don't know, what is going to be in our community center at this point. We haven't got a single line on paper. But Director Seaton asked about the possibility of a small preschool. I did visit one community center. It was not small. It was 24,000 square feet and it had a dozen rooms. They did have one dedicated for preschool. And I noted that they had a playground immediately next to it. So I did some homework, and I want to thank, I know Candace, I'm not sure if she's listening right now, but she's online, Candace DeKisto. So I had a nice emails back and forth with her to just educate us before we get into the process on what would really be required of the building and the space if we were to make preschool space. The one in Los Altos just has 15 kids half days, but it is a dedicated room and play site. So what Candace gave me lots of information that's really useful to have as we think about going forward. It requires 35 square feet of indoor space for every licensed child. It requires a kid's bathroom, and the space has to have its own entrance and exit and not be connected to the rest of the building, which actually is a good design feature for a lot of reasons. But it also has to have 75 square feet of outdoor play space per child, which if we have to accommodate the extra parking we're going to have to accommodate on that site, that is probably the bigger challenge than indoor space because it's such a large space, even just for 10 or 15 kids. But we are informed. I did tell Candace to keep keeping her eyes out for an alternative site because that will probably have to be an opportunistic find for her. And in any case, when we get into construction for the expansion and updates we need to do, it's going to be a construction site for probably the better part of a year. And so there'd be some displacement in any case. But I really appreciate the information, and I'm keeping an open mind, and we'll see how the building emerges from our discussions.
Thank you. All right, moving on.
And so are we planning a true outreach process where we're going to say, here's a clean slate, tell us what you want to see from this, from kind of the, from the ground floor? Or are we coming in and saying, here's where we're at, what do you think of, what we've done with them in terms of...
I was just thinking about this in the last week. We have some preliminary information because we included what would you want in a community center broadly when we did our survey a couple of years ago, and we did get 25% response rate for survey people is like, wow. So we have some good data to start with, and that was our beginning programming data. But I think now that it's a potential reality, it's worth going back out again and saying, okay, now we're really starting to put pen to paper. What does the community need from a community center? So many people learned so much about their lives and what they need from the pandemic. I think it's worth asking that question broadly at least once more. And then I think we would go pretty quickly to, okay, here's design options. But I think it's worth taking the pulse one more time on what are people's priorities.
Okay.
I think that's probably what you'd want us to do.
Anything further? Okay. Moving on to consideration of a permit for Harbor Village RV Park, 100 Capistrano Road, Princeton. Chuck, can you give us the staff report?
Delia, do you want to give the staff report?
Oh.
Delia.
There we go. Sorry about that. The Point Pillar developers are doing a Harbor Village RV Park project, which is located, proposed on the corner of Capistrano Road as you go into the harbor. It's a rather large project. They're proposing a 43 space RV park with 8 tent sites and an almost 1,000 square foot bathroom building with a laundry facility. We received the application back in October, and it was reviewed by the district's engineer, and there was some back and forth, and he essentially approved the final revision of the plans that were done for the sewer. And he also calculated the capacity needed for that at 25.9 ERUs, in essence, administrator, I can only approve any up to 2 ERUs. It's certainly something that has to go before the board for approval. So that's what we are looking for, is board approval of the sewer permit for this project. I believe that Keith Nurhan, I saw him on here earlier. He's the owner. He may be available to answer questions. I don't know. But I did the calculation of the fees. We would obviously need the pickup notice. The county would have to be ready to issue their permit. We would need that. We would collect the fees. And then assuming that we can get approval, I would be able to issue them a sewer permit for this project.
Chuck and Bill, can you speak to our options with respect to this request?
Yeah, well, like Delia pointed out, this is kind of ministerial. You know, the county is part of the planning process and approves the actual project. And it's our job to assess the ERUs, assess to it, which John Rayner has done. And I spoke with Bill earlier on this. So, you know, it's just something that's embedded in our district code that anything above 2 ERUs has to go to the board. I don't know, Bill, if you have anything to add, or that was good enough.
Well, I mean, I think that's accurate, Chuck, and the district code says, you know, basically, you know, it's been determined that the real property is within the service area and that the proposed project is not prohibited or precluded by the district regulations. So it's pretty low hurdle once, you know, since the engineer has already made his determination, and assuming you agree with that determination or the recommendation.
So even if we would prefer not to add 27 RV ERUs to the co-side, we are really required by the law and the regulations to approve this if it meets the requirements of our engineer and our district, which it does.
Right, and the considerations here would be an engineering consideration that they've done it correctly in accordance with our standard. And the other thing would be, do we have the capacity to serve the project as envisioned? And the answer to both is yes.
All right. Any questions? If not, can I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
All right. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All right. Roll call, please.
Director Dye.
Aye.
Director Clark.
Aye.
Director Sukamel. Director Marsh.
Aye.
Director Seaton.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries 5-0.
Okay, moving on. Consideration of a permit for Pillar Point RV park improvements by the Harbor District.
Okay, this is you as well, Delia?
Yes, this is a little different of a project because there is an existing RV park, and what the owner is doing, which is the San Mateo County Harbor District, is they are putting in a public restroom facility that will have 4 bathroom stalls, and they're putting 2 outdoor showers, and they're doing some other things that are not related to sewer, like, you know, landscaping or what have you. They're apparently taking out some existing RV spaces, and they're reducing the RV park down to 40, which apparently I'm of the understanding that the county is reducing it to 40, and that's what they're doing. Again, our engineer has reviewed the plans. There was some back and forth. There is an existing sewer line that needs to be rerouted, and some manhole adjustments that need to be done, a lot of technical stuff, but they've adjusted their plans accordingly. I did provide a link for those complete set of plans today, and there was a calculation of, let's see here, because of the number of ERUs that they acquired at the time that the original permit was pulled to install the RV park, and the fact that they are reducing the number of stalls our engineer determined that there was no additional capacity necessary for this permit. It was just a matter of his review of the plans, getting them to district specifications, which they are. And so there would really be no fees associated with it other than recouping the actual engineering costs, which I'm recommending are standard $5,000 deposit for engineering fees. And then I would, once the project has been connected and John's done his final review of everything, then I would just reconcile it. Probably end up paying them back a little bit of those funds. So again, it's coming before the board because it's not a standard permit, even though there's really no capacity associated with it. It's not a single family dwelling. And so I am seeking board approval for this permit.
Do we have status or standing to comment on the design of this project?
Beyond sewer, no, you'd have to go to the this is actually a project before the city council, and because it's within the city of Half Moon Bay. I don't know if the county has any jurisdiction, but you'd have to go to the city council. I think
well, I'm not saying, no, my question is, do we? And the answer you're saying is no, we do not have.
It would be the same as Chuck had and
Right.
council had stated before.
I just wanted that to be clear, that this is not something that we have the ability to comment on the project itself. We just are commenting on or approving essentially the relocation of the sewer line.
Yeah, it's our ability is to provide sewer to the project. Yes. And that's all it's all your discretion. Yes.
I know that there have been issues raised about the design of the project, but I just would like to say that I think adding toilets there, public toilets and showers there is a great improvement, whether the other aspects of this are as well designed as everyone would like. So, does anyone want to comment on this? Would someone like to make a motion to approve this?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
All right, any further discussion? Okay, could we have a roll call, please?
I have just a comment that the maps and plans that were included in the packet really don't show you what's going on at all. But the email that and link that Delia sent out shows a site plan, and it's much more informative. And when I looked at it, I had some doubts, but when I looked at this site plan, that it's like the first or second page of the of what she sent out. I think it's much improved from what I saw before, and I think it's a good project.
Okay, ready for a roll call?
Okay. Director Dye?
Aye.
We already did roll call.
We did? Not on this.
Not on this one.
Nope, no, we didn't. I wrote it just quickly. Director Dye?
Aye.
Director Clark?
Aye.
Director Sukamel?
Yes.
Director Marsh?
Yes.
And Director Seaton?
Aye.
Okay, motion approved, 5-0.
All right. Moving on to approval of audited district financial statements for the year ending June 30th.
Okay, give me a brief second here. Yeah, that's me. I hit the rotate button on my screen here. So, okay, as I've stated probably for the past 15 years, our audited financial statements generally show a district that's in really good financial health with not many changes from the prior year. Probably one of the main things we like to look at is our cash on hand from an asset standpoint. And if you look at our current assets, which are on page 167 of your PDF, the statement of net position, you'll see our current assets, which is basically liquid cash, if you will, close enough, has gone from 4.5 million in 2019 to 4.7 to 5.083 this year. So the district's in sound financial shape. we'll be doing, as we've talked about in previous meetings, we'll be doing a rate study this year to look at adjusting our sewer service charge, because your board has purposed all the property tax to the Parks and Rec side. So we'll be doing that in conjunction with this. But
also Sam is asking for increasingly larger infrastructure money.
Yes. So they were supposed to hold at 2.5 million, and they're at 3.1 this year and escalating. So, but as far as the audit goes and our financial position, we're in a strong financial position. So does anyone have any comments or questions about any of the numbers in here?
Yes,
probably another highlight is in 2019 we collected 1.486, and this is on page 168. In sewer service charges, that went up to 1.66 and then up to 1.877, and that reflects our sewer service charge going up from $460 a household to $520 to $580. So that's kind of the highlights of this. Any questions?
Yes, I have questions. The internal control measures that they bring up, I know that I've seen these before. These are really just because we have such a lean staff and a small office, and there really is no way to do some of the functions that they would like, the way they would like to have things done. Is that correct?
Yeah, and what page is that, Barbara?
Well, there are no page numbers on the PDF. For me.
Yeah, well, it's
page 2 of the audit. At the bottom, internal control related matters.
Yeah. So, and what's interesting about this is when they talk about internal controls matters, those are suggestions they have for they're generic suggestions almost for all districts. So we've actually taken steps in the past to have different sets of eyes look at this in relation to them actually saying, hey, you need to do this. So, we've got an outside accountant who does our books. So that's an internal
that's someone
control.
Independent, yeah.
Right, and then Delia approves, all the bills that are paid. That's the second set of eyes. If she has any questions, she, sends it over to me. So we've got multiple set of eyes. So that was kind of an interesting opinion because it's more a generic, hey, we want more people to look at it, but we've been doing that for the past years.
And we do examine the budget to actual report on a frequent basis. It's in every one of our agendas.
Every month.
Yeah. So
that's why I say it's a generic statement more than anything else. And Matthew,
yeah, Matthew.
The second to last page of their report, it's their page 24 at the bottom. It's they talk about what a deficiency is, what a significant deficiency means, and then the last paragraph, they always cover themselves with starting with things like, given these limitations, during our audit, we did not identify any deficiencies in internal control that we considered to be material weaknesses. So
it's page 190 if you're online.
Yeah.
So they do make those comments at the beginning, and like Chuck said, that's standard. But they seem to, at the end, they seem to clear us of any worries.
Yeah,
I wasn't worried about it, but
yeah, this is a clean audit, really. It's simplistic.
They drives me sort of nuts because I did really try to do my duty and read all through it, but they use a boilerplate because the audit for the other organization that I work with looks exactly the same language. And so I just wish they would highlight what they inserted specific to this audit so it would be easier to pick up.
Well, and they do the same, and we've had multiple auditors over the years, as you can imagine. They all kind of have the exact same boilerplate language in there. But, again, this is a clean audit, and that's the good news.
So how long have we had this auditor?
I think Delia told me this is the 6th or 8th. What did you tell me, Delia? You're muted. Hold up your fingers.
It's been 9 years, I believe.
9 years. Okay,
yes,
9
but
years.
They did switch partners, so we haven't had the same partner. And unfortunately, the main partner just unexpectedly passed away. on April 2nd of this year, which is really sad. He was a super great guy. But well, I had discussed this with our general manager. I think we're going to be putting out a little RFP for a couple different auditors so we can get someone new starting next year.
Isn't it good practice to switch every so many years so that you get new eyes on the books?
Yeah, you're required to do it every 6 years. And this has been an issue at SAM. And because they've been using a firm that at this time only has 2 principals, and so when they had to make the switch, they switched to the other principal, who's the sister of the main principal. And, you know, the staff there is small. So, you know, this was a concern, at least it was a concern to me, particularly since there had been some misunderstandings, I would say, in previous audits, though each year that they did it, it got a little better. And it was better, and the last one was a clean audit for SAM. But I think it is important to make a change. And, you know, one of the things they brought up was, well, GCSD is still using the same auditor after 9 years. And I said, well, I think GCSD is going to look for a change as well, because it's just good practice.
Yeah, and I want to clarify your comment. We're not required to change after 6 years. We're either required to change or to have a different partner be the lead partner on our audit. So we're still in compliance with the governing code. Yeah.
Yes, we still are, but and the firm that we use is larger. And one of the concerns with this firm Sam was using is that this is very small. So by changing partners, you know, I don't know all the details. I'm not going to go into it. One other thing I wanted to note is that it's interesting in the revenues, both the revenues go up. No, they're slightly less this year, but that's not because of the property taxes. It's the interest income that we're getting $58,000 less in interest income for the LAIF fund, which is a pretty big drop.
And I have been making a considerable effort to get the money shifted over as quickly as possible so that we can get as much interest as possible. The rate has gone down now, so.
Should be going up now, I would think.
Yeah, but it goes up from 0.35 to 0.6, so
yeah.
it's not a material change on our income.
And that fiscal year 2021, it was really low.
Yeah.
And then, interestingly, last year we spent $650,000 on infrastructure and did a lot of really great projects, and we have $500,000. And this past year we spent $500,000, $514,000. So we are investing in infrastructure in our community.
Yes.
I think those were the things that I just kind of pulled out of it as important things for us to let the community know that it's a well-run district, and our schedule of the things that we own is up to date.
Correct.
Excellent. We got compliments on this from a community member that we were the only agency that actually had a coherent and easy to read list of all your assets. Yeah. So, all right.
Good.
Anybody have any other questions on the audit?
We need a motion to approve it?
Yes, we do.
Approve it or to accept it?
Approve and accept.
Accept.
I use them interchangeably.
Okay,
So
go ahead. Is there a second?
Second.
Could we have a roll call, please?
Okay, Director Dye.
Aye.
Director Clark.
Aye.
Director Sukamel.
Aye.
Director Marsh.
Aye.
And Director Seaton. Okay, motion passes 5-0.
Moving on to consideration of agreement with Whitworth Parkin for district legal counsel services.
Okay.
Okay. So I think Bill's contract expired maybe in March or something like that. So he pointed it out to me, so we put it on the agenda. You know, I think we all think this, but you know, Bill's done a great job for us, as did Jonathan before him. So we're more than, you know, happy with their firm. So I'd recommend we approve the next 3-year contract. And I point out in my agenda memo that, you know, they're increasing rates, but they're still substantially lower than the market rate.
Is that because we're so charming?
Yes, yes. You just like working with us.
He told me if I bring up Jonathan again and how much I miss him, that the rates would go up to 400 an hour. So.
Do we have a motion to approve?
I also, I looked at the raising of the rates, and it's just under 9% or right at 9% for the first year, but it's much less than that for the following years. So
less than 2% each year.
Yeah, I'm happy. And my other comment is you've got me listed at the end as a signator as the board president, so that has to be changed. Other than that, did we get a motion?
We got a motion. We didn't get a second. Nancy moved, didn't you? Or no? All right. Can we have a motion? Who would like to make this motion?
I'll make the motion to retain Whitworth Parking.
Is that the motion?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Anybody? Can we have a roll call, please?
Okay, Director Dye.
Aye.
Director Clark.
Aye.
Director Sukamel.
Aye.
Director Marsh.
Aye.
And Director Seaton.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. The next item is consideration of a draft sewer authority mid-coastside general budget and contract collection services budget for 22-23.
Where to start? Maybe if you could, Barbara or Matthew, give a little background of what's happening at SAM. I put together some numbers, Barbara, of kind of what the past 3 years of SAM have looked like. So I don't know where you want to start. Would you like me to start? Would you like you to start?
Well, the staff report from the sewer authority, page 1, has a pretty good assessment for, total spending and assessments for each member agency. But yes, if you wanted to do something to make that clearer, that would be great.
Yeah, so the good news is each year we pay a little more, but we also pay a little less. And what I mean by that is 5 years ago, our flows constituted 28% of the SAM plant flows, and now they're down to something like 19.8%. So in general, as the SAM costs have been going up, and in some cases substantially, our share of those increased costs have been going down. So it hasn't had quite the impact on our budget as it has on Half Moon Bay, because the 10% in flow we've been reduced has been picked up by Half Moon Bay, because Montera's kind of stayed around the 20-21% flow mark. So, not so good news. SAM costs keep increasing. Good news is our flows keep decreasing. They seem to have leveled off a little bit at that 20% mark. But I took the time to look back at past O&M assessments, and when I give you these numbers, they're O&M assessments for all 3 districts, not just our district. So, the past 3 years, 2019, the O&M was 4.1 million. It went up to 4.9 million in 2020. Went up to 5.3 million in 2021, and this year it's kind of stayed steady at 5.319. So that's a substantial increase of $1.3 million in 3 years in just the O&M function. And I separate out that O&M function because the capital improvement program obviously can fluctuate wildly from 1.5 million to 3 million, depending on what project you do. But even as recently as 2017, the SAM O&M portion was 3.3 million. So we've gone from 3.3 to 5.3 in 5 years. It's a pretty substantial increase. Good news is on the collection side, which is the other major driver of our SAM cost, that is actually reduced because I think they were charging too much in the past, but that's gone down from $880,000 a year to $670,000-ish a year. So they've gotten a little leaner on the collection side.
Well, that's just because they bought the truck this year. And next year they don't have to buy the $175,000 truck. That's right, the entire.
But their O&M has gone down a little bit too. Now, part of that is because they've taken some of those costs and put them back on the treatment side. And that's what makes it so difficult to explain this SAM budget. You know, they move pieces around and it's tough to get an apples to apples to apples comparison over 3 years. And that's why I took the time to back out some of the numbers to try and make it that, you know, even comparison. So, you know, Barbara had mentioned previously, we had agreed at the agency manager level last year to kind of average $2.5 million in capital improvement projects for SAM. They've exceeded that this year at 3.1 and change. So it's a little higher. And you know, I don't know what the CIPs in years out will look like, but I think we need to try and get a number that we can all agree on, whether it's $2.5 million a year or $3 million a year in capital improvement projects, because, you know, when we set our rates, we generally set our rates for 3 years. And if SAM comes in next year with a $4 million capital improvement program, well, that throws our rate structure, you know, out the window. So I think we've got to look hard at limiting that and getting some kind of constancy with that. And SAM hasn't been good at that. You know, they've floated a whole bunch of 5-year CIPs, and then, you know, Barbara and Matthew, you saw at the last meeting, all of a sudden they're talking about that electrical system improvement thing, which is $1.5 million, $2 million, which has never shown up on another CIP budget. So we need more consistency from them in that regard, and we're going to be talking about that future managers meetings.
Chuck, my understanding is that I think it's you know, what you just said about the cycle in which we set our rates is important, and probably one of the complexities is that each of the 3 agencies has a completely different approach to setting their rates or when they cycle them. But it would seem that if the 3 agencies could follow the same cycle, where, you know, every 3 years we're going to do our adjustment, then SAM could align to it and could be, you know, pressured to align to it, that, you know, every 3 years you're going to set your, you know, $3 million a year for 3 years, and then we'll look at the next 3 years when we're looking at our next rates. But it's a little bit difficult, I think, when each agency is doing something different with the cycle on which they set their rates, trying to pin SAM down to do something that would make it easier on the agencies.
Yeah, and I understand your point, Nancy. That's not where the rub is. The rub is, you know, again, we sat down last year and we all said $2.5 million a year in capital improvements. That would probably smooth things out. You're absolutely correct, and that's a good suggestion. But at the end of the day, you know, we sit at these managers meetings and we can say what we want. If, you know, if Kishin brings a $3.1 million capital improvement program to the SAM board and it gets passed, you know, I don't have any power in you know, over that. And to some extent, even our reps don't necessarily have power over that because there are only 2 votes out of 8.
I know I said it on one of the budget meetings, and the other complexity thrown is they ask for it and then those projects don't necessarily get done.
Well, that's why when I went back and tried to, you know, look through all this stuff, I went back 5 years on their audits. So I look at the infrastructure spending for the past 3 years, and that's supposedly the capital improvement projects. It's 68,000 for 1 year, 114,000 for 2020, and 149,000 for 2021. They're collecting $2 million from us for capital improvement programs. So I don't know if they're taking some of the money they're spending on projects and putting it into the treatment budget or what they're doing. I can't figure this out, and I've been doing this a long time. It shouldn't be this difficult. But
I want to see the capital reserve budget.
Yes.
Right.
I've been working on.
I know you've been working on it.
I've been really spending a lot of time on this issue. And finally, I did get them to do a list of the capital improvement budgets that were approved last year. And so far, they've only spent, of the $2,478,000 that they were given by the three agencies, they've issued $800,000 worth of purchase orders, and others are in process, but there's still $1.3 million left to go this year. And you know, finally, it took a lot of pushing to get this, and they won't do it for the previous year. And the other agencies say, "Oh, we agree, it's too much trouble to do that." But what happens is they've ended up with more than $1 million sitting in the bank that is not part of their required reserve. And I think that happened in several years in a row. And it was that money that they used to deal with the BOD problem, because they've got this extra money that they don't have to account for. And so I actually brought this up at one of our meetings, and to say that, if they're not going to get these projects done on time, maybe we shouldn't have to pay starting in January for our share of the infrastructure budget. And Kishan did offer to wait 6 months to start collecting this year's infrastructure money. But that seemed cumbersome and wasn't supported by the other agencies. So I am still trying to get, Chuck and I have both been working on this, is trying to get the data for previously. But the other thing that they're doing now, and if you look at the infrastructure document in our current budget, they're now not showing infrastructure spending. They're saying, since it's all capitalized, it's like gone away. And so if you look at their infrastructure by category, there's no page numbers on this. It shows that the adopted in 2021 was 2.4 million, and at that point they were saying 113,000 was what they were projecting. For the previous years, there's nothing. There's no infrastructure budget left. And they were saying, well, one of the things that they do is whenever they buy a piece of equipment that's part of the operations and the treatment budget, they capitalize it, so they use the infrastructure money to pay for it. Well, that doesn't make any sense, because there's, the board's, there's a whole program. And then the last thing it's just very frustrating. The last thing I'll say.
Well, let me talk to that, though. That actually defies logic, because the infrastructure spending, if what you're saying is true, would be 2.4 million for the infrastructure itself, plus whatever they're capitalizing from the equipment there.
But now they're giving us a list of things that are being capitalized and saying those are going against the infrastructure budget. And I'm like, wait, what? So we're still trying to get answers on these questions.
I have two concerns. One is that they are collecting money for a certain purpose and not using it for that purpose, and they owe us an accounting of that. And the other is, when they make their case for those infrastructure improvements, it sure sounds like there are things that we need to do to keep the plant safe and operating properly, and then they don't do it. And that is as great a concern to me.
Well,
and you're right, Nancy. And, that's when I looked at that infrastructure spending. Barbara said they've spent $13,000 to date on the CIP program. Now they have, I forget,
more now.
Purchase orders out for 800, but we gave them 2.4. And to somebody else's point, their change, their change in net position, which is basically how much money they made over the course of the year. They made $370,000 in 2019, 1.32 million in 2020, 1.32 million that they collected and didn't spend, and then 2021 was $316,000. So
we should pay them.
That's $2 million in 3 years. And I said this, I think I said this at our last meeting, not quite tongue in cheek. The bad news is they've got a $3.1 million CIP program. The good news is they don't seem to spend it all each year. So, but that's not the way you want to run a district, right? I want to give you money to do the projects and get them done.
Yeah.
And we approved the current program, I think, in hopes that some of these issues will get resolved. The JPA says that if they don't spend the money, they're supposed to give it back. And we were told, oh, the general manager said, don't bother with that. But I don't think Chuck ever said that.
No.
And I wish the other two agencies would be as concerned about this as I am. So I have a finance committee meeting next week. I'm going to keep bringing this up.
And I'm sorry, Matthew, if I could just, I want to debunk the narrative that, you know, that Sam has this delayed infrastructure. I'm using the bad word. What do they call it? Where they don't do the project.
Deferred maintenance.
Thank you. Deferred maintenance. Yes. And it's falling, the place is falling apart because of that. We've been giving them $1.5 million, $2 million a year for CIP. Their equipment repair budget is $800,000 a year. Their professional services budget is $1 million a year. And the 3-member agencies have never not approved an infrastructure budget or equipment repair budget in 15 years. So there's this narrative out there that this deferred maintenance is occurring. It's not for lack of money. Sorry, Matthew.
Just real quick.
Okay. I want you to say that every meeting, actually. Because it's a big point, and thank you, Nancy, for your succinct pointing out of those 2 main points here that we really should be paying attention to, and that, you know, our general budget is allocations going up 9%, but Sam's increasing their general budget by 13%. And there are reasons for that, but it's way above inflation, and it doesn't take into account that they've got money we've already paid sitting in the bank. So my question is to the board, what do you want your SAM reps to do about this? Should we go in and insist that the money that wasn't spent last year either be explained exactly where it's going to go this year, or demand that it goes on into the new capital projects because they've already got the money, and that that Sam lowers the allocation for us?
If they came to the conclusion that they really did not need to do the projects they proposed, for which they have collected money, that money should roll forward into their next project budget. But I'd want them to explain why they proposed and made a case for something and then decided they really didn't need it after all 6 months later.
I would really like to see us go back another year, because they at least have come up with a tracking system and the list of projects from last year and the allocated funding and the status of all those projects. There is no really such
busy, and we shouldn't make them do these hard things. Is
well, and the other two agencies
in a public meeting. I had a word for it, but I can't say it in a public meeting.
The other two agencies have not been supportive of this, of going back an additional year. And I don't think we can really that's the year that we could really make a case for a refund for. I mean, for this past year, we're not finished the year. So that makes it a little harder to say, and we want you, it's the year before we should be looking at it.
Well, maybe you two can make and second a motion and let them vote against it publicly.
Well, I'm working on this in the finance committee pretty hard.
Bad idea, actually. and I'll repeat myself, since Matthew likes me to repeat myself. This stuff isn't that difficult. This is like governance 101, where we give them money, we should be able to track how it's spent. And to Nancy, to your point, but if we need to, at some point in time, we do a Public Records Act request to find out how they spent our money in 2021 and 2020, which is somewhat silly, but at some point in time, it's your fiduciary responsibility, you know, to figure this out. It's their fiduciary responsibility to tell us.
Well, and it is the Sam Board's fiduciary responsibility to ask for that accounting, and I think maybe we have to be less nice.
Well, maybe we need to actually go ahead and make a request for an accounting of capital improvement projects from 2019 to 2020.
Can I make a comment?
2021. We're already in 2022.
And let me, I hate to do this.
Right. Well, it's January to January, so it would be 2020 to 2021. Yeah.
If you asked me or Delia to provide a project accounting for the past 3 years, and once again, it's not because we're geniuses or we're great, it's because this is the basic function of a district, we'd run a QuickBooks report in about 5 or 7 minutes, and you'd have it, and there wouldn't be a fight. And that's the problem here.
I know that there was once upon a time when Sam didn't have an accountant on staff or didn't have a good accountant on staff, but that I would think is George's job and should be able to give you that accounting.
Well, they had a guy named John Parsons who used QuickBooks, and if I asked him to run it, and he actually had an accounting, and maybe Matthew, you remember this, he accounted for their project like 20 years back. It was in every financial statement. It was crazy, but at least I'd rather that at this point in time than what we got.
So could I just make one comment?
Yes.
Just want to mention, going back 5 years, for the past 5 years, the member agencies have given Sam over $10 million for capital improvement projects, and there's no accounting. So I think it really needs to go back farther than what you're suggesting. But I also noticed that in the budget memo that was done by the general manager, he mentioned reserves, but he didn't calculate the operating reserve, which I went ahead and did, and with some numbers that I received from Director Dye that I believe came from the general manager at SAM, I updated the cash per audit, and I calculated what the reserves should be for this year based upon the budget they presented, and that would leave in excess of the reserves cash on hand of $1.2 million, a little over $1.2 million.
Well, if
that's what I've been saying. That's what I've been saying. I have a whole spreadsheet for that.
Right. And that would actually reduce our district's contribution to SAM by $250,000 this year. And I don't know why Half Moon Bay and Montero wouldn't be going along with it. It would save Half Moon Bay like over $700,000 this year. So it really just doesn't make sense that they don't back this.
I'm sorry, Delia.
There's been no reconciliation since 16-17 fiscal year at all. So they're way behind, and they are required to do that. So we're not getting the accounting that we should be, and I agree.
And there was a period when they had it. Go ahead, Nancy.
Half Moon Bay was complaining that losing the lawsuit or getting their motion dismissed would cause them to have to raise rates for their poor ratepayers. Because apparently they don't pay for it with their sewer fees. I don't know what they do with those. But, you know, this could, and a good accounting on this and making sure that we're not putting money in Sam's bank account just to sit there could save them money with their ratepayers. So why would their representatives not want to do this? I think you just have to frame it up as all of our ratepayers are paying for money to go into the ether at SAM, and we should be working on their behalf.
So do we want to request an accounting of capital or infrastructure projects, spending and revenues for the past 5 years?
I would. If they haven't provided that reconciliation that Delia referenced, we should demand it. And if both of you two have to make the motion and second it,
just so you know,
go on record voting against it, then then maybe someone will write a letter to the editor.
The reconciliation I was referring to wasn't I wasn't referring to the detailed capital that we should be getting, but it was more of a general, what you've paid versus what we've spent on an annual basis that we did get on a regular annual basis from the prior management up until 16-17. So we have not received anything since then. But yeah.
Go ahead. They have a new person at Mays they are working with, which I think will be a positive change. And they're about to hire an additional accounting person.
Well, this should be their whole job.
Chuck has an opinion about it. All right. I'm working hard on this already. I don't need to be pushed because I'm the one who actually brought this up in the first place, and I've been, fighting this place for months.
Do you know how much they've spent for Mays this last year and the past year? It's ridiculous.
$300,000. Yeah, $300,000. So on accounting services, in addition to the full-time person, who I think is pretty good, and then they're going to hire another person. All right. Well,
do we have to approve this budget? Do we have to?
No.
Well, I'll ask my SAM reps. Do you recommend that we approve this budget at this point?
I do, for two reasons. Number one, some of the cost increases are legitimate. It's true that the costs for all the chemicals and all the things that they do have gone up enormously. And I think it just gets more complicated all the time. I voted to approve the infrastructure budget, not because of this financing question, and I still have major issues about the financing part of it, but because I do think having a plan in place is reasonable, and the list of projects is also a reasonable one. And I did want to highlight for our community, if anyone's paying attention at all, that this year there is going to, maybe this year, but in the coming fiscal year, one of the projects is to replace the Princeton pump station. And this will impact our residents because it's going to happen down, it's that mysterious building behind the chain link fence in the overflow parking lot for the Mavericks parking area. They will be doing a major project there and replacing that whole pump station. So, this is something our community should be aware is going to happen. And I will encourage them to communicate it when it actually goes out to bid and is on the schedule. So I don't know. Matthew, do you want to speak to why we voted yes on moving this budget along? Because they can't operate without a budget very well. And I don't think we're going to get major changes, but I'm slogging away.
With one.
Well.
Yeah. It's almost impossible to vote no, and especially when you know that there are 6 votes that are going to go the other way, because you're saying a no vote says you guys have SAM as an organization is so goofed up that we can't guarantee you that you're going to have money to run the plant next year at all. But maybe that's what we need to say, or we could pass it under protest.
I do want to say that while I have major issues in these areas, in these finance areas, I think that we do have an obligation to provide our share of the funding for this plant. And I have these specific issues that I think we need to get resolved, financial issues. I think it is responsible to go ahead and approve this budget and continue to work on these issues. That's where
we should have simultaneously asked for that accounting for the last 5 years.
Well, that's what I was going to. Yeah,
I'm doing that. But yes, and it would be helpful to have some more backing.
As you recall, the BOD issue and all that sampling, testing, et cetera, cost a lot of money, and we kept wondering where it was coming from, and then we found out. And I don't think SAM should have a slush fund like that because the board was not informed. We had to insist over and over again, how much is this all costing? And then wait 2 weeks or a month or whatever to get an accounting of the plant upset cost that went through 4 months ago. And so
we did approve some of the aspects of it, but we did not approve them as a reallocation of funds.
That's right.
So that's a different, we didn't approve them all, but a lot of them were small, a lot of them were cumulative and within the discretionary limits of the general manager. So I want to be,
because I have actually gone to the meetings and seen you query them on the detail. If you ask me to approve it, then I would make a motion to approve this resolution because I know you'll stay on the detail. Yes. But I'm happy to look at your spreadsheets too.
Okay. And I do think that having a board request for additional financial documentation would strengthen our case. And,
I think we need to remove it from you two swimming upstream at the SAM board meeting and have the district staff send a request to their staff saying, you know, tell us what you've spent it on. I don't care how much work it is. It shouldn't be that much work, or you should need a new accounting program. And if we don't get what we need, we do a Public Records Act. I mean, this is a lot of money, you know?
Yeah. And they should be doing this anyway.
Right. Again,
I did my
everybody else does it.
I did my spreadsheet on, you're right, the audits, and then going back to the meeting where the CIP, where the infrastructure budget was approved, and trying to get those numbers. But I know Delia's helped fine tune the numbers, that the spreadsheet that we've both been working on. So you're both doing the work of the Sam's accountants.
I was just going to say, we probably have 3 identical spreadsheets on our computers doing all this. So.
All right, so we have a motion to approve the SAM budget, and then do we have a second?
I'll second. But by the way, Barbara, they already hired that second financial person to help George. I met her last week.
Well, and then but
we make a motion to approve both resolutions, or do you need a vote for each?
Well, no, I think we need to talk briefly about the collections one. I think we should approve it separately.
Okay, we'll finish this one. Yeah.
Okay, so the motion on the table is to approve the sewer authority mid-coast general budget for fiscal year 2022/23.
Correct.
Okay.
Roll call, please.
All right. It was motion by Nancy, second by Matthew. Yes. Director Dye.
Aye.
Director Clark.
Aye.
Director Sukumel.
Aye.
Director Marsh.
Aye.
And Director Seaton.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 5-0.
And then I just like the collections budget. I just think it's important to keep it separate. It tends to get merged into the other, and it's a separate it's a contract. It's not part of our JP and everything. So I don't have much to say about it. I think it's fine. I think the SAM people do a really good job of maintaining the lines. They're always there. Quickly, if you read the manager's reports, you know, they have a specific city by city, you know, the various incidents that happened, and they talk about how much they've cleaned. The new $175,000 truck is a big help. It's smaller and it's all state of the art, so it enables them to do a better job of cleaning. And unfortunately, their big truck just had its engine blow, so they're asking for emergency authorization for funding to repair that. So, but they finally have good equipment now. The previous truck they had, the brakes didn't work, so that was kind of a problem.
What could go wrong?
Yeah. Anyway, so I would.
That's why it's still sitting on the SAM property.
just roll up a hill, you're fine.
Just keep going uphill, right? And downshift on the way down.
Plan.
Yeah, and I just want to second what Barbara said. I think and Delia's been telling me this as well, so I don't want to steal her thunder. But you know, they've really turned their stuff around on the collections crew. They're doing a great job. They're much more really responsive. So it's all good news there.
And we invested in a piece of equipment that makes them even more efficient, which I think is important when we're carping about the budget. In the collections budget, that was a big chunk, and it got done. It actually took
the collections budget has gone down over the year, so that's good news. Yeah,
it took them like a year to get the truck, but it was back ordered.
Right.
So anyway, that's why I want to do collections separately, because it's a separate thing. So can we have a motion to approve?
And a better story.
Yes.
Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Director Dye.
Aye.
Director Clark.
Aye.
Director Sukumel.
Aye.
Director Marsh.
Aye.
And Director Seaton.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
have to say, it is a very detailed budget.
Yeah, it is. And moving on to, sorry, I guess I'm supposed to do that. Moving on to the report on sewer authority mid-coast side meetings. Our last meetings, we didn't really do very much. We authorized some new projects and so forth and finished early. So, Matthew, do you have anything to report?
The March 28th meeting was about the aforementioned electrical reliability improvements, and was a very it's expensive. Everything's expensive at SAM, but it really needs to be done, in my opinion, because whoever located the electrical building that is the main circuit for the entire plant and the lowest spot on the property made a bad decision. And the equipment in it is really outdated, and if you see it, you just wonder, you're running electricity through this? Yeah. So that was okayed. We talked about contracts.
But wait, we didn't okay it for funding. We didn't fund it. We just approved that if they can go for a grant for that funding. We did not approve that project we did not fund that project.
Didn't the board actually say that the information sent to the member agency general managers and get feedback?
Yes.
Yes.
And so Kishan circulated a meeting request on that. So yes.
Yeah.
So the idea is Montera is preparing a grant application for that project on behalf of SAM. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Matthew, but I thought it was important to clarify that.
Then there was the April 11th meeting. Let me find that.
Can I just talk to the Montera issue? They actually applied for the LHMP, the local hazardous program, and that is why they can actually apply for a grant. SAM can't. So just FYI. Sorry.
Okay. And we looked into also joining the local hazard plan, but it turned out that we don't really have anything that would remotely qualify. It was a huge amount of paperwork, and only one agency needed to be part of it in order to support grant applications from SAM. So, did you find the April 11th?
Yes. We did all the regular stuff, and then under regular business, we had a report from an outfit called BioBot from Massachusetts that is collecting wastewater samples from across the country and even some from Canada for COVID studies. It turns out that wastewater is a great indicator of where and how fast COVID is spreading, much faster than any other source. They get results in one day after the sample arrives, and are able to gauge how much virus is in the wastewater by source across the country. And this is really useful information. For one thing, it correlates between public health measures taken in various states, cities, and counties, and the level of public cooperation as well. And of course, those all show that if you do what the public health experts say, the COVID situation doesn't get worse as fast. And the board approved continuing to do that. Then we authorized 2 purchases for chopper pumps at the Montara pump station, and then they will then have 2, And these things grind up all the, I don't know where these rags and towels and stuff come from into the sewer system, but
Flushable wipes.
No, they call them rags. It's a generic term. It's when solids bundle together and coagulate. So they're not rags.
It's flushable wipes, right?
I've seen photos. They look like rags.
Yeah, well, they throw rags down too. Even before the disposable wipes, we had this issue. Yeah, so
yeah,
the disposable wipes exacerbated it, obviously. Yeah.
So the district up north now has 2 of these chopper pumps, and the next chopper pump we approved is at the plant. So the plant will now have 2, and I'm laying this out because the conclusion here, and I asked, there are no other chopper pumps in the entire collection and treatment system. That is, the district that puts in 60% of the total flow doesn't have any chopper pumps. So that has to be handled at the plant, and that everybody pays for.
Did Montera pay for the 2 that are at the Montera pump station?
No, it's part of the same.
It's part of the system.
Yeah.
Yes. It's essentially, it is essentially the IPS. And then the board approved an extension of the current general manager's contract for 3 years, and he was given a cost of living adjustment, but no other raise. And to me, that was like a semi-satisfactory outcome. And yeah, that was the important stuff that happened in April.
And let me just say, Monday night's meeting, we will be dealing with the permit process. And one of our local breweries gave me permission today to say that the fees that they are potentially going to be charging may put him out of business. The fees that in the staff report that they're talking about, depending on how they're calculated, but we're talking thousands of dollars a year. They're also requiring them to put in their own water meters for the brewery, as opposed to right now the brewery, Half Moon Bay Brewery, is combined with the restaurant. Top Dogma is combined with everything in that whole area. But if they apply the test results that they get on some of the material that is left over that actually does go down the drain to the entire volume of water they use, most of which is in the beer, and people drink it. Most of the water that goes into those breweries doesn't go down the drain.
It doesn't come out of the brewery.
Well, it does, but it walks out. So there are some real issues with what's going to be on the agenda and the way that they're implementing that program. So,
and we talked about this at the managers meeting, and continuing the theme of me repeating myself, I said, we continue to chase a problem that doesn't seem to exist and demonize these breweries. The good news is as best I can tell, they're not going to institute this onerous permitting fee, but that has yet to be seen. And just because I'm here, just for the record, the past 3 months, the influent BOD at the plant has averaged 233 parts per million, 160 parts per million, and 240 parts per million. So it was at 400.
Now it's not.
Now it's not.
And I don't know if you saw the editorial, the op-ed piece in the Half Moon Bay Review, which was a resident, I don't know who he was, sort of recounting his tour of the SAM facility and with Kishan and what he was, and I think maybe Tim as well, and what he was told there. And in that he reported that the big problem is wineries and breweries, and that they have been known, not to obey the rules, which is just outrageous to me. I mean, maybe he misquoted them, but the way they're behaving, it seems completely consistent with their attitude.
Who you're talking about right now?
Did you see that op-ed in the review?
This week?
Yeah.
All right, I'll look at it.
I think it was a couple weeks ago, maybe.
I thought, was it Jim Larimer?
No.
No.
Oh,
No,
all
it's
right.
another guy. It was, the headline was something like, imagine a different wasteful sewer treatment system or something.
All right, I'll look for it. Thank you.
Here we go. Hold on. Here's what it said. Let's be.
I hate to add anybody to Sam's barrel, but it sounds like they need some training on public relations and treating your.
Here's what it says. This is an author recounting what he was told and what he saw at the SAM facility. Wine and beer use a lot of yeast, hops, and grapes. The residue can be recycled, but if it is discarded into the sewer, it must be biochemically treated just like raw waste. It requires oxygen in the treatment tanks and is measured by an analysis of biochemical oxygen demand. There are legal limits of BOD because managing it is at the heart of sewer treatment design and operating costs. Some abuse the legal limits on BOD. Like residential sewer waste, commercial waste leaves a fingerprint and can be identified with attributed costs. And that's what some, local residents took away his tour of the SAM facility. Anyway, we will have a meeting on Monday night. Did I mischaracterize what was said?
No, Dave Olson put a link to it in the chat if you want to grab it.
Yeah. People want to read it. So we will see what happens out of the meeting. I'm glad to hear, Chuck, that the managers were against a lot of.
Was it at the last meeting or the meeting before we approved another rate study for exactly for this?
No, we approved consultants. We hired the consultants who know nothing about anything except managing brewery waste. Chuck, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, well, I don't know if you're talking about hiring Tausig and Associates to figure out what the fee structure should be.
Yeah.
So we talked about that at the managers meeting as well. And again, we seemingly put the kibosh on that. We're going to spend $25,000 to figure out what the fee structure should be for the breweries. So, and we actually, as an aside, we use Tausig for our assessment district. So.
Right.
So theoretically, that's not going to go forward.
And there are various other things that will be discussed at the meeting on Monday. Yeah. So it's not an action item on Monday. It's just information. But I mean, I feel like Hop Dogma is an important part of our community, and I asked him, I said, can I share the fact that this is putting you in jeopardy? And he said yes, because it is. All right, moving on. Anything further on that? No. Consent agenda. March 17th and 31 meeting minutes, April warrants, February financial statements, and assessment district distribution. We have, anyone want to pull anything from the consent agenda? Can we have a motion?
I'll move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Is there a second? Sorry. Uh-oh.
Second.
Make a roll call.
Director Dye.
Aye.
Director Clark.
Aye.
Director Sukumel.
Aye.
Director Marsh.
Aye.
And Director Seaton.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Moving on to committee reports. Does anyone have a report on seminars, conferences, or committee meetings? Do we have an attorney's report? Seeing none, I'm moving on.
No report, Barbara.
General manager's report.
I've got nothing further. No more repeating.
Administrative staff report.
Nothing further.
I have a question for you. Is there anything you can do about that trailer that's for sale that's parked on the Burnham Strip?
I'm not sure where
it's
is
a big camping trailer. It's over by just to the north of the sign. By where the
across from the fire station.
Oh,
Yeah.
There's the old fire
that's
station.
technically not our property. That is part of the Caltrans, I believe, easement. I don't know.
Oh, for Alhambra.
I could put in a complaint.
There's two, or there were two the other day.
And
Yeah.
I'm surprised the fire department hasn't complained because it might affect their back. Oh, that's right. They're not there anymore. They used to back out of that building. They're not there anymore. Yeah, I don't know. If they get enough complaints, I imagine they would, the sheriffs would come out and make them move. It's not legal for them to be there more than 72 hours. So.
Is there a complaint form to be filed?
There's a what's called an abandoned vehicles department. There's a special number you have to call, and I can give you the number. I think that's.
You can probably find it, but I guess
Like the Public Works, but I have a specific number for that.
I just don't think that's not a used car lot or a used.
There's also an RV that's been parked up by the new station that's right along the edge of the property, and I don't think it should be there either, but someone's living there.
Yeah. Okay.
Should make the new RV park have 3 like low income spaces or something.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Engineers report? No engineers report tonight?
Yeah, John was actually out on vacation. We're proceeding with the design of the CIP, and we may be adding, Delia's been working with a homeowner who's got a line down the middle of her property, and it's a 1920 line, as it turns out, and they want to move it or replace it or something like that. So I talked to John Rayner about accelerating that replacement because it's a 1920 line. And depending on what the timing is, we may be able to do that. So that's where we're at.
Good to be responsive to our residents.
They want to do some improvements to their property, and they want to build over where the easement is. So that's why.
Would they move the easement then with the line?
Well, we can move the pipe around the building. That may be more complicated, but if you put a new PVC pipe in there and they want to cantilever a deck over it, I don't have a big issue with that. If it's the 1920s line, I do. You put the PVC in there, and I guess what I was trying to tell you about, this is like, I think we're different than the county or something. Let's try and work with our ratepayers and help them out. I didn't mean to denigrate the county. I meant bigger districts.
All right, future agenda items. Anything? Okay. I think, is there anything else that we need to discuss tonight?
Oh, just mention there is a recycle event this Saturday.
Great. Thank you all.
Good job moving it along, Barbara. That was a big agenda.
Thank you. I hope I wasn't too mean to Leonard, and now I'm feeling really bad about it.
I told him I would mute him, so anything you said was nicer.
And he has some nice too.
I mean, he has so much to offer. But I just figured we'd already finished that item.
Yeah.
It's actually really nice to have him there. And
for those of you who don't know this, Leonard owns the house that's right next to where the parking area would be on Sonora.
Oh,
so for him to say it was great, because I know where his house is, that was surprisingly nice.
Yeah.
Well, he doesn't live there though, so.
No, you can tell. You go and like the weeds have been cut and the bushes are clipped. Yeah.
Oh, good night, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Barbara.
Good night. Thank you.
Barbara, are you available?
Everybody, what a good meeting, everyone.
Barbara, are you available for signatures tomorrow?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Bye.
Bye.